It was the kind of cold that didn't just touch your skin. It reached deeper, into your bones, your heart, your soul. On Christmas Eve, when most homes echoed with laughter and warmth, one man sat completely still, like a statue frozen in grief, wrapped in silence. He wore $1,000 coat, but it couldn't protect him from the weight pressing down on his chest. He had everything: power, fame, fortune, a penthouse view of the skyline, and a name that once moved markets. But tonight, he had no one. His name was Jason Hartley, a man who built an empire with his bare hands, but had lost the one thing that couldn't be bought: connection. He didn't know it yet, but someone was walking toward him, someone who would change everything. She was 6 years old, blonde hair peeking out from under a woolen hat, cheeks red from the cold, but eyes full of light. She stood in front of this man, this broken titan of industry, and asked a question that would echo for years. Come and have my food. How did we get here? What would make a powerful man disappear into the shadows of his own life? And why would a child, a complete stranger, offer him the only thing she had left? This is a story about broken hearts, unexpected kindness, and how sometimes the smallest hands can heal the deepest wounds. But don't be fooled. This isn't a fairy tale. It's real. It's raw. And it might just change the way you see the world. If you've ever been so lost that you stopped believing anyone would ever find you, if you've ever looked around during the holidays and wondered if you'd ever feel whole again, then stay with us. Because this is not just Jason's story. It's ours. And if you've ever believed that a single moment can rewrite a lifetime, then hit that like button and subscribe, because what happened next will surprise you more than you're ready for. Jason Hartley was once the man everyone looked up to. At 42, he ran Hartley Dynamics, owned fancy apartments in different cities, and was engaged to the woman he thought he'd marry. That was before the betrayal, before the silence, before the Christmas he decided he didn't want to celebrate anymore. His fiancée had left him just 2 weeks before Christmas. "You don't know how to love," she said as she walked out the door. And maybe she was right. Jason had built his empire by being tough, by making hard choices, by putting business first. He thought success would bring him happiness. Instead, it brought him loneliness. On Christmas Eve, he found himself walking through the city park, wearing a $1,000 coat, but feeling emptier than ever. The snow was coming down heavy, and most people were home with their families. But Jason, he had nowhere to go. He sat down on a bench, not caring that the snow was soaking through his expensive clothes. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about deals or meetings or money. He was just sitting there, wondering how he'd ended up so alone. The park was quiet except for the sound of snow falling. Jason closed his eyes and felt the cold on his face. He thought about all the Christmases he'd missed because of work, all the relationships he'd lost because he couldn't make time for people. He was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice the small footsteps approaching in the snow. Can someone be successful and still be emotionally broke? Tell us what you think in the comments. If you've ever felt like success came at a cost, like no one sees the pain behind your smile, then like this video and hit subscribe. Because Jason's world is about to collide with someone who sees right through him. That same evening, as Jason sat on that snow-covered bench feeling sorry for himself, a tiny voice spoke up. "You look hungry." He looked up to see a little girl, no older than 6, in a bright red coat and wool mittens. She was holding out a small plate covered with a cloth napkin. "Come and have my food," she said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world to offer dinner to a stranger. Jason stared at her. When was the last time someone had offered him something without wanting something in return? When was the last time someone had looked at him and seen just a person? "I'm okay," he said softly. "But thank you." The little girl tilted her head. "My mommy says when people look sad, food makes them feel better. Are you sad?" Jason felt something crack inside his chest. This little girl, who didn't know him from anyone else on the street, could see what his business partners and employees never noticed. Yes, he was sad. He was very sad. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily," she said with a big smile. "What's yours?" "Jason." "Nice to meet you, Jason. Now come on, have some food. My mommy made extra, and she always says we should share with people who need it." Emily sat down on the bench next to him, completely unbothered by the snow. She pulled back the cloth napkin to reveal a plate of homemade mac and cheese, some green beans, and a dinner roll. "This looks amazing," Jason said, and he meant it. When was the last time he'd eaten homemade food? When was the last time someone had cooked for him with love instead of being paid to do it? He took a bite, and it was the best meal he'd had in years. Not because the food was fancy, it wasn't, but because it was made with care, and it was being shared with kindness. As they sat there eating together, Emily told him about her day. She'd helped her mommy bake cookies for their neighbors. She'd made a Christmas card for her teacher. She'd built a snowman in their tiny backyard. Jason found himself smiling for the first time in weeks. And for the first time in years, he was really listening to someone else. Would you have accepted that plate? Or turned away out of pride? Let us know in the comments. If you've ever been saved by a stranger, or wanted to believe in miracles again, hit that like button. And subscribe, because Emily's innocence is just the beginning of something much deeper. Jason took another bite of the mac and cheese, and it tasted like home. Like the meals his grandmother used to make when he was Emily's age, before life got complicated. This is really good, he told Emily. I helped make it, she said proudly. I stirred the cheese sauce, and I didn't spill any this time. They sat there side by side, sharing the meal. Emily told him about her dreams. She wanted to be a teacher like Miss Johnson at school, or maybe a chef like the lady on the cooking show her mommy watched. What about you? Emily asked. What do you do? Jason paused. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that you run a company with thousands of employees? That you make decisions that affect people's lives every day? That you have more money than most people see in a lifetime? I help people with their jobs, he said simply. That's nice, Emily said. My mommy says helping people is the best thing you can do. Jason felt that crack in his chest widen. When had he stopped thinking about helping people? When had business become just about numbers and profits instead of the people behind them? Emily told him about her mommy, who worked 2 jobs to take care of them. About their little apartment that got cold in the winter. About how they saved up all year to buy presents for the families at their church who didn't have much. We're not rich, Emily said matter-of-factly, but Mommy says we're rich in other ways. We have each other, and we have friends, and we have enough food to share. Jason felt tears stinging his eyes. This little girl and her mother had so little, but they were sharing their dinner with a stranger. Meanwhile, he had everything money could buy, but he'd been sitting alone on a park bench on Christmas Eve. Your mommy sounds very wise, Jason said. She is, Emily agreed. She says every person we meet is fighting their own battle, so we should always be kind. Jason looked at this little girl, really looked at her. She was teaching him something his business school professors never could. That kindness wasn't weakness. That sharing wasn't about having extra. That sometimes the people with the least to give are the ones who give the most. As they finished eating, Emily's chatter filled the quiet park. She told him about her favorite Christmas movie, about the snow angel she'd made earlier, about how she hoped Santa would bring her mommy a new winter coat because hers had a hole in it. Jason smiled and laughed more in that hour than he had in months. And for the first time in a long time, he felt warm. Do children see things adults forget to notice? Tell us about a moment that changed your perspective. If your heart just warmed a little, if you believe the smallest people can make the biggest impact, hit like and subscribe. Because in the next chapter, Jason meets someone who will shake his entire past. As they talked and laughed together, Jason heard footsteps approaching through the snow. A woman's voice called out, worried and a little scared. Emily? Emily, where are you? Over here, Mommy. Emily called back, waving her mittened hand. A woman appeared through the falling snow, bundled up in a coat that had seen better days. She was young, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes and a face marked by worry. There you are, she said, relief flooding her voice. I told you to stay close to the soup kitchen. You can't just wander off like that. Emily jumped up from the bench. Mommy, this is Jason. He was sitting here all alone, so I shared our food with him. The woman, Sarah, Jason would learn, looked at him with a mixture of caution and curiosity. She was clearly trying to figure out if this well-dressed man was safe to be around her daughter. I'm sorry if she bothered you, Sarah said politely. Emily has a habit of talking to everyone she meets. She didn't bother me at all, Jason said, standing up. She actually helped me more than she knows. He extended his hand. Jason Hartley. Sarah reached out to shake it, then froze. Her face went pale, and she took a step back. Jason Hartley? She repeated. As in, Hartley Dynamics. Jason's heart sank. Here it comes, he thought. The recognition. The change in how people treat him when they know who he is. Yes, he said quietly. Sarah stared at him for a long moment. Jason waited for her to grab Emily and walk away, or to ask him for money, or to treat him differently somehow. Instead, she did something he never expected. She smiled. "Well," she said, "I guess the world really is smaller than we think." "You know who I am?" Jason asked. "I used to work for one of your companies," Sarah said. "About 3 years ago. I was let go during a restructuring." Jason felt his stomach drop. He remembered that time. They'd had to let go of hundreds of employees to keep the company profitable. It had been a hard decision, but a necessary one. At least, that's what he'd told himself. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. "I know those were difficult times." Sarah looked at him for a moment, then sat down on the bench where Emily had been sitting. "They were," she said simply. "I was a single mom trying to make ends meet. Losing that job, it was scary. We had to move to a smaller apartment. I had to take 2 part-time jobs instead of 1 full-time one. There were nights I wasn't sure how we'd pay rent." Jason felt sick. This woman, who was now sharing her dinner with him, had suffered because of his decisions. Emily, this sweet little girl who'd shown him such kindness, had gone without because of choices he'd made in a boardroom. "I should go," he said, starting to stand up. "Wait," Sarah said. "Sit back down." Jason looked at her, confused. "You know what I learned during those hard times?" Sarah continued. "That everyone's fighting their own battles. That sometimes the people making the big decisions are just as lost as the rest of us. And that holding on to anger just makes you bitter." She looked at Emily, who was building a tiny snowman near the bench. "Besides," Sarah said, "my daughter just fed you. In our house, that makes you family. And we don't give up on family." Jason stared at this woman who had every reason to hate him, who had every right to be angry, who had lost so much because of his choices. And she was showing him grace. "I don't understand," he said. "Everyone deserves a second chance," Sarah said simply. "Even CEOs who make hard choices. Even people who have everything but somehow have nothing. Even lonely men sitting on park benches on Christmas Eve." Jason felt tears in his eyes. This woman, who'd lost her job because of him, who'd struggled to feed her daughter, who had so little, she was offering him forgiveness he didn't deserve. "How?" he asked. "How can you not hate me?" Sarah smiled. "Because hate is heavy, and I've got better things to carry. Like hope, like love, like the belief that people can change." She looked at Emily, still playing in the snow. "And because my daughter saw something in you that made her want to share her dinner. Emily's got good instincts about people. If she thinks you're worth feeding, then you're worth forgiving. Could you show kindness to the person who once cost you everything? If you believe forgiveness is strength, not weakness, hit that like button. Subscribe, because Sarah's truth isn't the only thing about to be revealed." The next morning, Jason woke up in his penthouse apartment, but something was different. The view from his floor-to-ceiling windows looked the same. The expensive furniture was still there. But Jason felt changed. He couldn't stop thinking about Emily and Sarah. The way Emily had shared her food without a second thought. The way Sarah had shown him forgiveness he didn't deserve. The way they'd made him feel more human in 1 hour than he'd felt in years. He got dressed and went back to the park. The bench was empty now, covered with fresh snow. He sat there waiting, hoping they'd come back. They didn't. The next day, he went back again. Still nothing. Jason started going to the park every day after work. He'd sit on that same bench, watching people walk by, hoping to see a little girl in a red coat or a woman with kind eyes. Days turned into weeks. Jason began to panic. What if he never saw them again? What if that one perfect moment was all he'd ever have? He started visiting soup kitchens around the city, asking if anyone knew Emily and Sarah. He checked with local churches, community centers, anywhere people might go for help during the holidays. "I'm looking for a little girl and her mother," he'd tell people. "Emily and Sarah. The little girl has blonde hair and the biggest smile you've ever seen. Her mother works 2 jobs and has the kindest heart." But no one knew them. Jason realized he didn't even know their last name. He'd been so focused on his own pain that night that he hadn't asked the simple questions that might help him find them now. For the first time in years, Jason wasn't thinking about business deals or profit margins. He was thinking about 2 people who'd touched his life in ways he was still trying to understand. His assistant noticed the change. "Mr. Hartley, you seem different lately. Are you okay?" "I'm trying to find someone," Jason said. 2 people, actually. They helped me, and I need to help them back. He hired a private investigator, but even that didn't work. "There are thousands of Sarahs in this city," the the investigator told him. And without a last name or more specific information, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Jason felt desperate. He'd built a business empire, but he couldn't find one little girl and her mother. He could buy almost anything, but he couldn't buy his way back to that moment of connection. Late at night, he'd sit in his apartment looking out at the city lights, wondering if Emily and Sarah were out there somewhere. Were they okay? Did they have enough food? Was Sarah working too hard to make ends meet? He started volunteering at food banks, hoping he might run into them. He donated money to children's charities, thinking maybe he'd find them that way. But weeks passed, and there was no sign of them. Jason began to think he'd lost them forever. Maybe that one night was all he was meant to have. Maybe Emily and Sarah had been angels sent to teach him something, and now they were gone. But then, just when he was about to give up hope, something arrived that changed everything. Have you ever lost someone you never thought would matter, until they were gone? If you've ever searched for meaning in the middle of a storm, hit that like button. Subscribe, because Jason is about to receive a letter that changes everything. 3 weeks after that snowy night in the park, Jason was sitting in his office going through his mail when his secretary brought him a small envelope. "This came to your personal address," she said. "It's hand-delivered." Jason looked at the envelope. His name was written in careful, childish handwriting. His heart started racing. Inside was a crayon drawing of a snowman and a short note. "Dear Mr. Jason, thank you for sitting with me in the park. You looked sad, but you got happy when we shared food. Mommy says sharing makes everything better. Come to our church this Sunday. We'll have more food to share. Your friend, Emily. P.S. Our church is called Hope Community on Maple Street. Come at 12 o'clock. Jason stared at the note, reading it over and over. Emily had remembered him. She'd found a way to contact him. She wanted to see him again. That Sunday, Jason drove to Hope Community Church on Maple Street. It was a small building in a part of town he'd never visited before. The neighborhood was older, with small houses and apartments where families were clearly working hard to get by. He parked his expensive car and walked toward the church, suddenly feeling nervous. What if Sarah didn't want to see him? What if she'd changed her mind about forgiving him? But as he approached the building, he heard familiar laughter. Emily was outside playing with other kids in the churchyard, still wearing that red coat. "Jason," she called out when she saw him. "You came." She ran over and hugged his legs, and Jason felt that crack in his chest open up again. When was the last time someone had been so genuinely happy to see him? "I got your letter," he said, kneeling down to her level. "Thank you for inviting me." "Come on," Emily said, taking his hand. "I want to show you our church family." Inside, the church was warm and full of people. Not a lot of people, but the ones who were there seemed to know each other well. They were setting up tables with food, laughing and talking, kids running around playing. Sarah appeared from the kitchen, carrying a big pot of soup. When she saw Jason, she smiled. "You came," she said. "Emily invited me," Jason said. "I hope that's okay." "Of course it's okay," Sarah said. "Everyone's welcome here." That's what Hope Community is all about. Jason looked around the room. These people didn't have much. Their clothes were simple, the church building was old, the food was basic. But there was something here that all his money couldn't buy. There was love. There was community. There was joy. "Can I help with something?" Jason asked. Sarah looked surprised. "You want to help?" "I'd like to, if that's okay." So Jason spent the afternoon serving food, playing with kids, and talking with people. He learned that Hope Community wasn't just a church, it was a family. These people took care of each other. When someone lost a job, the community helped them find another one. When someone got sick, people brought meals. When kids needed school supplies, everyone pitched in. After the meal, Jason pulled Sarah aside. "I want to do something," he said. "What do you mean?" "I want to help. This community, this church, what you're doing here, it's amazing. I want to be part of it." Sarah looked at him carefully. "Jason, we don't need your money. We need your heart." "You have it," Jason said, and he meant it. "You've had it since that night Emily shared her food with me." Over the next few weeks, Jason became a regular at Hope Community. He didn't come as the CEO of Hartley Dynamics. He came as Jason, Emily's friend, Sarah's. Well, he wasn't sure what he was to Sarah yet, but he hoped it might be something special. He helped with the food bank. He played with the kids. He listened to people's stories. And slowly, he began to understand what Sarah had meant about being rich in other ways. These people had community. They had purpose. They had each other. One evening, after another church dinner, Jason was walking Sarah and Emily home when he made a decision. "I want to do something for the community," he said. "Something big." "Jason, I told you." "Not just money," Jason interrupted. "Though there will be money. I want to build something. A community center. A place where people can come for help, for food, for friendship. I want to call it Emily's Table." Sarah stopped walking. "Emily's Table? After the little girl who taught me what it means to share," Jason said. "If that's okay with you." Emily, who'd been walking ahead of them, turned around. "You want to name something after me?" "I want to name it after the person who changed my life," Jason said. Sarah had tears in her eyes. "Jason, that's incredible. But why?" "Because your daughter gave me something I didn't know I needed," he said. "She gave me hope. She gave me a reason to care about people again. She gave me a family." He looked at Sarah, his heart pounding. "If you'll have me, is the real value in what we give, or in how we give it? If this moment gave you chills, like and subscribe. Because what comes next isn't just about charity. It's about destiny." 6 months later, Jason's life looked completely different. He still ran Hartley Dynamics, but now he ran it differently. He thought about the people behind the numbers. He visited the different offices and plants, talking to employees, learning their names, understanding their lives. When the company had to make difficult decisions, Jason made sure there were safety nets, job retraining programs, severance packages that actually helped people transition, support for families going through hard times. But the biggest change was in his personal life. Jason had become a regular part of Sarah and Emily's world. He came to Emily's school plays. He helped with homework. He taught Emily how to ride a bike in the park where they'd first met. On weekends, he'd come over for dinner, and they'd cook together. Real food, made with love, shared around a small table in their tiny apartment. It was better than any 5-star restaurant Jason had ever been to. Sarah had quit one of her jobs because Jason had insisted on helping with expenses. "I'm not paying your bills," he'd said when she protested. "I'm investing in our future." Because by then, Jason knew what he wanted their future to look like. One snowy evening, almost a year after that first meeting in the park, Jason was sitting on Sarah's couch helping Emily with a puzzle. Sarah was in the kitchen making hot chocolate, humming to herself. Jason looked around the small apartment. It was nothing like his penthouse. The furniture was old, the walls needed paint, the heater made funny noises. But it was full of love, full of laughter, full of life. This was home. "Emily," Jason said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Sure," Emily said, not looking up from her puzzle. "How would you feel if I asked your mommy to marry me?" Emily's head snapped up. "Really? Really? But only if you're okay with it. Because you're the most important person in your mommy's life, and I want to be part of both of your lives." Emily thought about this seriously for a moment. Then she smiled the biggest smile Jason had ever seen. "Does that mean you'd be my daddy?" Jason felt his eyes fill with tears. "If you want me to be." "I do want you to be," Emily said. "I've been wishing for a daddy, and I think you're the best one I could have wished for." That night, after Emily was asleep, Jason and Sarah sat on the couch together. "Sarah," Jason said, taking her hand, "a year ago, I was the loneliest man in the world. I had everything money could buy, but I had nothing that mattered." He got down on one knee, pulling out a simple ring. Not the biggest diamond or the most expensive setting, but something beautiful and meaningful. "You and Emily gave me something I didn't know I was missing. You gave me a family. You gave me love. You gave me a reason to be a better person." Sarah had tears streaming down her face. "I know I'm not perfect," Jason continued. "I know I have a lot to learn about being a good partner and a good father. But I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to spend the rest of my life making you and Emily happy." He held up the ring. "Will you marry me?" Sarah looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd been broken and lost, who'd been sitting alone on a park bench, who'd been changed by a little girl's kindness and a single mother's grace. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were married 3 months later in Hope Community Church, surrounded by their chosen family. Emily was the flower girl, beaming with pride as she walked down the aisle in front of her mother. During the ceremony, Jason looked out at the congregation. There were his business associates, sitting next to people from the soup kitchen. There were wealthy friends, next to families who were struggling to make ends meet. There were people he'd known for years, next to people he'd met through Sarah and Emily. It was perfect. In his vows, Jason said, "Sarah, you taught me that love isn't about what you have. It's about what you give. Emily, You taught me that the smallest acts of kindness can change someone's entire world. You both taught me that family isn't about blood or money or success. It's about showing up for each other every single day. He looked out at the congregation. And all of you taught me that community isn't just a nice idea. It's the most important thing we can build together. After the ceremony, as they celebrated with cake and dancing and laughter, Jason pulled Sarah aside. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For seeing something in me worth saving. For believing I could change. For letting me be part of your family." Sarah smiled. "Thank you for being willing to change. For choosing love over loneliness. For showing Emily what it means to be a good man." They looked over at Emily, who was dancing with some of the other kids from church, her face glowing with happiness. "We did good," Sarah said. "We did," Jason agreed. "We did really good. Do you believe love can come when we least expect it? And need it the most? If your heart just skipped a beat, like and subscribe. Because the final chapter reveals what Jason built from the ashes of his past. 5 years later, Jason stood in front of a large building with a sign that read Emily's Table Community Center. It was Christmas Eve, exactly 6 years since that snowy night when a little girl had changed his life. Inside, hundreds of people were gathered for their annual Christmas celebration. Families were sharing meals, kids were playing games, and volunteers were making sure everyone felt welcome. Jason watched his daughter, because that's what Emily was now, officially and in every way that mattered, as she helped serve food to people who needed it. She was 11 now, but she still had that same generous spirit that had led her to share her dinner with a stranger. "Remember when this all started?" Sarah said, coming up beside him. She was pregnant with their second child, and Jason couldn't wait to teach this new baby about kindness and community. "I remember a little girl who saw someone who needed help," Jason said. "I remember a woman who showed me what forgiveness really means." Emily's table had grown beyond what any of them had imagined. The community center served meals 3 times a week. There was a job training program, a childcare center, and a food bank. They'd helped hundreds of families get back on their feet. But more than that, they'd built something beautiful. A place where people could come not just for help, but for connection. Where kids could play safely, where parents could find support, where lonely people could find family. Jason still ran Hartley Dynamics, but now it was a different kind of company. They'd partnered with dozens of organizations like Emily's Table. They'd created programs to help their employees thrive, not just survive. They'd proven that a business could be successful and still have a heart. "Daddy," Emily said, running up to them. "Mrs. Peterson wants to thank you for helping her find a job." "Mrs. Peterson helped herself," Jason said. "We just gave her a place to start." Emily rolled her eyes. "You always say that." "Because it's true," Jason said. "People don't need saving. They need support. They need community. They need someone to believe in them." He looked around the room at all the faces, some familiar, some new, all part of this family they'd built together. "Just like a little girl believed in me when I was sitting alone on a park bench." Emily grinned. "Are you going to tell that story again?" "Every chance I get," Jason said. "It's the most important story I know." As the evening wound down, Jason found himself back in that same park, standing by the bench where it all began. Sarah and Emily were with him, along with their newborn son, David. "Hard to believe it all started here," Sarah said. "Not hard to believe," Jason said. "Perfect to believe. This is where I learned that the most important things in life can't be bought. They can only be given and received." He looked at his family, his wife, his daughter, his son, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked. "I'm thinking about how one plate of food changed everything," Jason said. "How one act of kindness created all of this." He gestured around them, at the park where they'd met, at the city where they'd built their community, at the family they'd created together. "I used to think success was about what you could take from the world," Jason said. "Now I know it's about what you can give to it." Emily, now 11 and wise beyond her years, looked up at him. "Daddy, what if that night had never happened? What if I hadn't shared my food with you?" Jason thought about it. "Then I'd probably still be sitting on this bench, alone and unhappy. And you and your mom would still be amazing, but I wouldn't be lucky enough to be part of your story." "But it did happen," Emily said. "Because that's what people do. They help each other." "Yes," Jason said, picking up his daughter and holding her close. "That's exactly what people do." As they walked home through the gently falling snow, Jason realized that the little girl who'd approached him 6 years ago had been right about everything. Food does make sad people feel better. Sharing does make everything better. And kindness really can change the world. One plate of food at a time. What would you do if one child's kindness gave you a second chance at life? If you made it to the end of this story, thank you. Please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a little hope today. And remember, your kindness might be someone else's miracle. Because sometimes, the smallest acts of love create the biggest changes in the world.